But this is the part of the search warrant right here, the affidavit at the end of it, where they go search procedures for handling potential attorney-client privilege information, because they knew going and raiding Mar-a-Lago, they'd be running across a bunch of information that is potentially going to be privileged, in which we discussed before. Privileged information is anything between a client and an attorney that law enforcement cannot use it against them. Okay, it could have been, yo, I did the crime, baby. I killed them, and they find that it's the privilege can't be used. Okay, so yeah, basically what the FBI is saying here is like, yo, we're gonna have two different teams. We're gonna have a search team that is like filled with the case agents, and we're gonna have other people that are searching that are gonna be able to establish if something is tainted information, aka privileged, and we're gonna go ahead and make sure that the case agents on the investigation don't actually come across that. Why? Because if you're a case agent on the investigation, you're supposed to be unbiased and not seeing certain information that you should be seeing anyway in the case. You can't look at that stuff. Okay, so the taint team is supposed to be there to taint themselves so that the actual case agents or investigating FBI agents on the investigation from the Washington field office aren't necessarily tainted. Go ahead, Andrew. I know you have something.
And there's a very important thing I forgot to mention here. So this is
the part of their affidavit that talks about
this. This is a spicy one. So when is this going to happen? What's the timeline on this? Because here's the whole thing. Like I said, the last two times we checked my last two, I'm like, the timing of this is very sus. It's very, very fucking sus. So the judge said, the judge ordered that he has until November 30th to complete his job. But the government came back and said, oh, no, that's too long. We want him to complete it by October 17th.
Oh, interesting.
So why would they say October 17th? Clearly, I'm sorry, but clearly that's an election-based move. Clearly that's saying, hey, we want this to come out. We want this, indictment to potentially go forward right before the midterm elections, which are coming up in November, in the beginning of November. So I think that was entirely timed. Trump's lawyers, of course, assert that the special master needs at least 90 days from now. So that's where we're at. But November 30th. So we're looking at November 30th timeline. This is not something that has to be completed before the election. Although he may end up doing it quickly. This guy may be impartial and say, look, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take as long as I'm going to take. That may be what he does. Who knows? But he has until November 30th.
Okay. All right. So what we're going to react to, guys, is we're going to go ahead and actually, as you guys know, me and Andrew, right? We're even though, full disclosure here, I like Trump. Okay, I'm a Trump supporter. I will go ahead and say that I like Trump. Okay. However, I'm going to put my personal biases aside and assess the situation in totality of circumstances. I personally believe, based off the information that I've seen, etc., that more than likely there's no way that the Department of Justice isn't going to indict Donald Trump at some point in the future. Andrew, I don't know if you share the same sentiment.
I think.
Go ahead.
I had a subsequent conversation after our last conversation with some other lawyers about the obstruction charge, and I think because when he was subpoenaed, he didn't turn over what he was supposed to, even though that was privileged, even though he didn't, but technically, or declassified, because we got into this big hole, is it classified versus declassified, the declassification process. But technically, the way the subpoena was worded, he should have turned it over because it was marked confidential. Whether or not it was actually confidential or not, that's technically the way the subpoena was filed and granted. Now, his lawyer should have objected to this. There should have been a lot of things that were done. They frankly weren't done. So I think it's possible to get him on the obstruction charge. Of course, if all of this information, right, turns out to be pretty much privileged mostly, then it's going to be like convicting him or indicting him for resisting arrest on a time when you pulled him over on a bunk, you pulled him over for a bad reason, right? He wasn't speeding. You pulled him over for speeding, but then he resists arrest. So you arrest him for that. You can get him for it, right? Because clearly he didn't do it. He didn't produce the documents. So could you get him for it? Probably. Is it going to be incredibly divisive? Is it going to look horribly political? Yes. It's going to look very petty and very political.
Absolutely.
But that may be what happens.
So what we're going to do here is I'm actually going to pull up a very biased former prosecutor that clearly doesn't like Trump. And we're going to go ahead and react to his analysis of what he thinks is going to happen with the Donald Trump situation.